Wow, Huples Cat, Merry Christmas or Merry COVIDmas. I've cancelled Christmas until next July because I don't think it's appropriate to have Christmas this year, but that's just me. So what I've got for you lot is a top 10 list of items that I think you should get if you're not a prepper right now. If you're not a prepper right now, you've got to look around the world and go, maybe preppers had a good idea to be ready for discontinuity and ambiguity and problems in society. So what would I get? What would I get now? So what I've done is I've looked at Mountain Equipment Co-op, a Canadian firm, which I don't shop at anymore because they've annoyed me by being took out by an American company. That's a long story, but it's convenient. And I've also looked at a few specific manufacturers, and I also have most of all of the gear that I'm going to recommend. But I'm not recommending it to get money from you or get money from advertising. It's just purely what I think and why I think these products, if you have the money for it, are worth getting. So if you're not a prepper, you need actual emergency kit. You can buy them, and there's some examples here. You can see what they're like. They are usually generally well overpriced for what's in them, and usually the gear isn't great that's in them. So you have to shop around, you have to think about what you're getting it for. But for a 24-hour or a 72-hour emergency, mostly they'll give you enough water, a little bit of water, and a little bit of sugary food, and they'll give you a little bit of clothing and stuff like that. So they're actually worth getting if you don't have a bug in or a bug out kit. If you haven't been prepping, or you haven't been a camper or a hiker or a mountain climber in the recent past, you need to get an emergency kit because, quite frankly, $100, $150 Canadian, boom, you've got it solved for most things. For most problems that you're going to encounter as a human being in your house or in your car, you would have that. And I would recommend that you have 2, possibly 3. The first one should always be in the car. The second one should always be in the home, and the third one should always be in your place of work. So that sounds like excessive amounts of money, and it kind of is. And one of the things I'd recommend you do is find a make of emergency kit that you like, have a really good look at what's in it, and then source the individual items separately and see if you can make it better quality. The better quality is, the better it is, okay? Cheap does not mean great if you're depending on it for survival. Number 2 on the list that I'm recommending, a lot of people do not have one, is a decent outdoor emergency first aid kit. Now I happen to like the make I'm going to show, and I happen to have a couple of them. I also have a couple of kits from Costco. It doesn't really matter, you need a proper big emergency kit. Not a little boo-boo kit, not a tiny little one with a few bandages in it. You need one with big absorbent cotton pads, you need one with sterile gloves and decent scissors and the ability to sew skin, not just use super glue. I don't believe in super glue. You should be able to suture, put stitches into open wounds. Much better for the healing process. If you use super glue and you get the area infected underneath, it's going to be way more dangerous for you than if you actually put skin stitches on the outside. But that's another matter. Food's actually simple. Food, like most things prepping, has money and finance behind it. One of the things I recommend you do is don't buy at all any type of emergency food, long-term storage food. Waste of money, total waste of money, very expensive, and you're paying well over the odds for what you're buying. What you need to do is get food that you can eat without cooking. You may not be able to cook, or you may not have the time to cook if you're traveling to get away from danger or to get to help. So again, ultralight camping, ultra runners, marathon runners, they use stuff like gels, which work really well. You know, you need about 5 to 10 of them a day minimally, and get a variety of flavors. Don't just get the one flavor. Again, a lot of emergency food buckets will have 2 or 3 types of meal, and that's going to get old very fast. I also recommend highly vegan chocolate. Apart from the fact veganism is the way to go in 2021, it's also lasts forever. Vegan chocolate, when it goes old, gets like a white crusty on it, and you just scrape that off and it works just fine up to a 10 to 20 year period. And it is more pricey than milk chocolate, but it doesn't go rancid. It's also light and full of calories, and it'll get you where you're going. Now Huples, you're saying, in my emergency, if it's for 3 days, I want to eat a hot meal. Okay, I would argue you don't need to if it's for a 3-day emergency, but it's always a good idea to have a substantial amount of food in. The most important food source will be your home pantry. Your home pantry, what you normally eat, what you normally use, by buying a few tins extra a week or buying a lot of tins extra right now if you have the cash and the time, is to actually fill the pantry shelves and rotate the tins and the dry goods that you have in there. Don't forget salt, don't forget spices, utterly important. The other thing with this is if you're actually going to buy emergency food, rather than go to Legacy or Wise or any of the other multiple brands out there, just go to your local store that sells camping gear and buy camping foods. You just put water in them and boiling water in them and you have food, and it's a lot tastier than it ever was. Now I'm going to show a few of them, of course. The ones I've really got into is Food to Go, and I'm not going to link it because I'm not here to sell you stuff. I just want to give you an idea. Like, I'm a vegan, so all of my camping stuff is vegan, so I found Food to Go to be the best of all of them. It's also the most expensive. But again, if it's for an emergency, that's a short-term duration emergency, how much do you want to spend to be comfortable as opposed to surviving? And I think that's one of the issues you have to ask. If it's just for survival, go to the cheapest supermarket you can go to and buy a bunch of tins. Covered. Get a couple of tin openers though, and actually make sure you have a decent tin opener. Now I put water low down on this list. I put it at number 4. The reason being this video is for people who never prepped, who have not prepped now and want to prep now. So water is one of the most controversial and important things. As with everything in this video, it depends where you live and how much water you have access to, as will become quite apparent. The most important thing you need for water is water storage. I have a 20-litre container of water just over there, and every 6 months I put it on the garden and refill it from the municipal tap, because the municipal tap has chlorine in it and it works just fine. So I have 20 litres of water there, and you'll see a lot of things where you need X amount of water per person per day. You need the water for cooking, you need the water for drinking, you need a little bit of water for hygiene. You don't really need a lot more water than that, so you can get away with quite a little. Now I live in southern Ontario in Canada, and we have multiple freshwater sources all around wherever I'm ever going to be. So my principal thing that I would advise you to do is get water purification tablets. Again, that can get quite confusing, but what you need to do is not look for ones where you mix things together in a jar. What you need to do is one where you grab a jar and drop a tablet in it, one tablet, and wait half an hour to an hour depending on where you are. Now one of the other things you can do, and you should get, are things called micro towels. Now they're not exactly great for the environment apparently, but these things are great. They are great as a towel. If you are wet and it's cold, you have to get dry or you're going to get hypothermia and die. But you could also get these things quite reasonably if you look around. Camping stores will charge you a fortune. Again, shop around. So what you do with this is you actually pour the water through this if the water's contaminated by obvious physical debris, and then treat the water that comes out with a tablet. I don't have too much of a need for micro towels where I am, but if I needed water, that's what I would go with, tablets. So the other thing is, after that you want to get a water purification filter. There are multiples of these. They range from fairly cheap, like the Sawyer, which I do not recommend because I don't think it's very useful. I think it's too slow and it's too prone to self-contamination, my opinion. So even though it's the cheapest water filter and everybody pushes them, I don't like it. What I would go with and what I have is the Mission LifeStraw Mission, and I'll show you a different type of them. There's different types of everything, and I like the Mission because I just put the water in it, hang it on a tree or wherever, and basically I have a slow trickle of water, so I can get litres of water in a very quick period of time, and it works well. Again, with these types of filters, after a little period of time they won't work. So they're a short-term solution. Not as short-term as tablets, but still a short-term solution. So what's my long-term solution? Well, I'll just show you this. This is how to make bleach, so you can keep bleaching water and drinking it for a long-term survival situation.
Hi, my name is Zach Gleason. I'm the MSR Water Lab Manager, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the MSR SC200 Community Chlorine Maker. It comes in this little kit, which includes the electrochlorinator device, a power adapter for 12-volt battery, a saltwater solution preparation storage bottle, a starter pack of salt for making your first solution, a chlorine storage bottle, a couple of different measuring tools for ensuring you're adding the right quantity of chlorine, like small packet test strips for testing to ensure that you're actually getting the dose you desire. Instruction booklet, and then there are pictorial instructions on the inside of the box. The first step in preparing to make chlorine is producing the saltwater solution. So to do that, I use my saltwater solution bottle, and I'm going to add salt to the fill line here on the bottom of the bottle. So remove the cap.
I do not have this product. I think it's quite expensive, and I can see it's used in certain parts of the world. Up here in Canada where I am, I got a ton of fresh water. I just need to treat it for giardia and a few other things. So I'm not really that convinced that I need a home-based community chlorination plant. But if you do, because water's short where you are heavily contaminated by bacterial growth, remember no filter is going to take out hydrocarbons, that might be an idea for you. What I use at home, and I've used it now for over 2 decades, is a thing called the Berkey. The Berkey water filter has black filters that are gravity filters that last about 10 years if the water is cleaned, and if you're using it in a long-term situation, you use micro towels to get rid of all debris. You might want to get a Berkey filter and get 2 black filters. They'll last you 10 years. The problem with all ceramic filters and all types of filters, including the Sawyer, all LifeStraws, all Berkey, is if they have had water through them and then they freeze, there's a huge risk of contamination when you start to reuse them again. So you have to keep them in a fairly temperature environment, and obviously the Berkey that I use I can't really carry around very easily. So that's why for bug outs and for hikes I plan on using the LifeStraw Mission and tablets. Now what do you do if you live in an area of the world that has very little rainfall and very little fresh water? For example, say you live in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, if it's going to be a long-term emergency, you better have actual water stored up, and water cannot be dehydrated. So you want to look at methods of storing water, and I do think the best and cheapest way is big plastic containers that you fill from the municipal tap and empty out every 6 months and replace them. Again though, at some point your water will run out and you will be out of luck. So you need to be thinking then about long-term collection of water. But again, in the here and now, for a 3 to 5 to 6 week emergency, that's the time scale you want to be thinking about. Can I be okay? I'm not going to be great, but can I be okay in my house, in my car, in a cottage, for 5 to 6 weeks with 0 external supply? That's what you need to be thinking. An external supply does definitely include water. You have to be very careful about that. You cannot skimp on water. Water will kill you before anything else. But for people who haven't ever prepped, I put it as number 4. You need to get the other 3 things sorted out first. First aid, emergency preparedness kits, and of course some food, because that's what's going to drag you down. There's water in the toilet, there's water in the hot water container. You'll be able to find water. It won't be great water, but you'll be able to find it. Sterilizing it so you don't get infected will be absolutely critical. Toodles. This was a brand new Terry production 2020.